Hey everybody, it's Spicy Kai. Today I want to talk to you about Miracle Gro, its cousin, Roundup weed killer, and its makers, Monsanto. But before we get started, why don't you go ahead and hit that like button for me. And if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit subscribe and click that notification bell so you get notified every time I drop a new video. Now let's hear from Brian from Next Level Gardening.
All right, this next one is from Crystal Snow. Thank you for the tips. This will get me started on growing carrots in containers. I'm still wondering if the Miracle Gro potting soil is fit or should I add something. Ordered green sand but won't be here for months. So I've had a lot of comments, especially lately, about Miracle Gro products, mainly potting mix. Here's my view on them. They aren't organic. They are chemical based. They put Miracle Gro into the soil. And so that is going to do exactly the opposite of what we were just talking about in developing your ecosystem. It's going to start tearing it down. And in response to that, you're going to now need pesticides, herbicides. Now, if you do a little research on who owns Miracle Gro, that company has plenty of pesticides and herbicides for you to use that will kill everything in your garden. Conspiracy? I don't know. Looks over his shoulder. So I don't use Miracle Gro products.
So who was Brian of Next Level Gardening talking about? Monsanto. Check it out. German pharma giant Bayer secured a $66 billion takeover of leading genetically modified crop producer Monsanto. If approved, they will be the biggest agribusiness in the world. They will sell 29% of the world's seeds and 24% of its pesticides. They will monopolize the food industry and have influence over the government. They could raise the prices of seeds and pesticides, which means higher prices of food and commodities you need in your daily life. 6 other major agribusinesses merged in the past year. Since farmers produced too much harvest, commodity prices have fallen in the last few years. Farmers have reduced spending on seeds, pesticides, and fertilizer. This has eaten into sales of major seed, chemical, and fertilizer companies. To gain more profit, their only choice now is to merge. If this pushes through, the 3 biggest seed companies would be in control of 59% of the world's seeds and 64% of all pesticides. These mergers boost the profits of huge corporations and leave Americans paying even higher prices. Not only should this merger be blocked, but the DOJ should reopen its investigation of Monsanto's monopoly over the seed and chemical market.
It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Perez coming to you from Baltimore. Last week, German chemical giant Bayer announced it plans to purchase the agricultural seed and supplies company Monsanto for $66 billion. If the deal goes through, this would be one of the all-time largest mergers of the decade. At first glance, the 2 companies operate in different markets. Bayer is mainly known for chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and Monsanto is best known for its genetically modified seeds.
This year. So that's about reduced. So farmers who are dependent on commercial seeds and commercial and agrochemicals will have a reduction in the number of suppliers of these items. But more concerning for us, I think, is that both Bayer and Monsanto are at the forefront of pushing a model of agriculture which increasingly takes control away from small-scale food producers and into the hands of multinational corporations. They push a model of agriculture where farmers who've been saving seeds for generations, who've been cultivating their own seeds and swapping them in their communities, where they've been using agroecological methods to fertilize soil and to get rid of pests, these farmers are being pushed into a different model where they are forced to depend on these big corporations, where these big corporations are able to set prices, terms and conditions, and ultimately their packages of seeds and chemicals need to be purchased year upon year, which is an additional cost and can jeopardize livelihoods.
What are the dangers of Miracle Gro? Well, let's see. Salts. Using an inorganic fertilizer like the standard Miracle Gro product over a long period of time can encourage salt buildup in the soil. This decreases a plant's ability to take up nutrients. Pesticides. In 2008, the EPA ordered the Scotts Company to recall 2 Miracle Gro products. These products contain a commonly used herbicide, trifurulin. Because the herbicide was not listed on the Miracle Gro label, consumers may have been unknowingly exposed and may not have followed safe handling or disposal practices. The company recalled the products. However, some consumers may have purchased the products before the recall. Environment. Many ingredients of inorganic fertilizers do not come from sustainable resources. The production of fixed nitrogen in the original Miracle Gro and other fertilizers commonly involves energy produced by burning fossil fuels like coal and natural gas. Additionally, excess fertilizer can be washed into local water sources, creating algal blooms that consume oxygen in rivers, lakes, and even oceans. This oxygen starvation kills life in the affected water, creating dead zones. Fish live in water, humans eat fish, and humans also eat other animals that eat fish. Prevention. Do not use a fertilizer unless your soil requires additional nutrients. After fertilizing, water thoroughly, but do not allow overwatering or runoff. Immediately clean up any spilled fertilizer. That's how dangerous it is. Doesn't say that on the back of fish and kelp fertilizer, does it? Monsanto, a photographic investigation. Sweet story. The best way to tame a wildfire is with chemicals. Without chemicals, life itself would be impossible. Without chemicals, many more millions would go hungry. Is that right? Do you really believe that? I bet you say, I just won't buy GMO seeds. Yeah, right.
In 2016, I covered the battle by farmers and environmentalists to stop Bayer and Monsanto from merging into one company. The Department of Justice just ruled that the merger of these two corporate giants could take place. You know the name Bayer is aspirin. You might take a leave now and then for your pain or whatever. But Bayer is one of the largest chemical and seed manufacturing giants on the planet. And Monsanto, that's the company that rules the roost, so to speak, in how farmers farm, what they grow, how they grow it, the chemicals they can use in the ground, and how it's used. In the last few years, we've seen other giants of industrial agriculture production merge. ChemChina and the Swiss company Syngenta combined their pesticide and industrial seed might. And then came Dow Chemical and DuPont, another merger seizing control of the market. So what does all this mean for us, for our environment, for our farmers, for our farming, for our food, for the growth of these capitalist monopolies? How does it affect our lives? We're joined by Tiffany Fink-Haynes, who is Program Manager for Pesticides and Pollinators at Friends of the Earth, where she leads the organization's work to eliminate toxic pesticides and advance sustainable industrial food systems to protect people, pollinators, and our planet. In a role, she leads the federal, state, local policy, and marketplace campaigns aimed at reforming industrial agriculture. And Tiffany Fink-Haynes, welcome. Good to have you with us here on The Real News.
There were over 1 million people across the country that signed petitions urging the Department of Justice to block this merger. There were an outpouring of farmer outrage urging the Department of Justice to block this merger, but yesterday DOJ essentially said it was disregarding all of that opposition and allowing these companies to go forward with their merger and become one enormous company.
But one of the things the DOJ said apparently is that because Bayer, I believe, is allowed to sell off $9 million to BASF, that this would somehow ameliorate all that. There could be real competition, so there's nothing to worry about, folks. We made it right. So what does that mean, and what's the reality from your perspective? What's the real deal?
Right. So I mean, what DOJ is essentially saying is, well, we're going to take a little piece of Bayer in this part of the company here, and we're going to give it to BASF, and that's going to allow this merger to maintain competition in the marketplace. But as you mentioned at the beginning of the program, there's been multiple mergers in the past several years. So we've moved to now essentially have just 4 companies in this marketplace. And Bayer Monsanto was the last of these 3 mega mergers to happen. And so by allowing Bayer and Monsanto to merge, we essentially have 2 big companies, Dow, DuPont, Bayer, Monsanto, and then these 2 smaller players, BASF and Syngenta.
Now let's talk about BASF and Syngenta for a second. Now when you Google BASF GMO, it's plain as day. Wiki says genetically modified crops by BASF are sold, distributed through biotechnology companies like Monsanto. Next article from Reuters, very reputable, okay? Bayer, BASF, to pursue plant gene editing elsewhere after EU, I don't feel like reading the whole thing, but EU ruled technology should be regulated like GMO, okay? So EU says no, we regulate our GMO here in our country, so you're out. You can't come here. Get out. America wants this, therefore they're okay with it. Next article, GMO patents held by Bayer and BASF. It goes on and on and on. Goes on and on and on. Now mind you, these are the people behind Miracle Gro, okay? This is from BASF's own website. This is their own website, okay? It says, our portfolio ranges from chemicals, plastic, performance products, and crop protection products to oil and gas. Now think about that. Chemicals, plastics, performance products, oil, gas, and crop protection products. Why would that be thrown in there? What is the purpose of that? Think about it. Now let's check out Syngenta. Because think about it, this is number 3 and number 4. These are the last 2 monopolizing the market. We are a global leader at providing essential inputs to growers, crop protection, seeds, seed treatments, and traits as in GMO. This is the part that has Miracle Gro fans so excited. Think about this deeply. We are devoted to helping growers do more with less. So give these chemicals to your stuff and it'll grow way faster than everybody else's. And then you can feel like you just did so much better than everybody else's. But all you're doing is essentially, hold on, we'll get to that. Now, right here, I Googled, is Syngenta organic? That's all I asked. Is it organic? Source Watch, very reputable group. Syngenta is a global agribusiness, agrochemical, and biotechnology company based in Basel, Switzerland. Listen to this. It has substantial interest in the seed industry and genetically modified crops. What chemicals does Syngenta make? Herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, and seeds, including rice and corn. Why rice and corn? Because rice and corn are used to make herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides. Those are the same people behind Miracle Gro. But let's check out what Syngenta's website has to say about them and who they are. I have looked at this whole thing. I read every single word on their homepage, every single word on their about page. It mentions nothing about GMO, nothing whatsoever. If you were on this company's site, you would never know they are involved in GMO. Watch out now, watch out.
And even by just giving a small amount of Bayer, because in reality, $9 billion, even though that's a lot, is not really much at all when you think about the fact that this was a $66 billion merger. So by allowing the $9 billion to go to BASF, worth of those company assets, BASF is a much smaller player, and so they're not necessarily going to be able to compete at the same level that Dow, DuPont, or Bayer, Monsanto are. So even though DOJ is saying, hey everyone, we're all set, competition is good here, we know that that's not the case, that we've essentially ended up with only 4 companies in the marketplace, only really 2 that are going to really be able to compete in this industry and be manufacturing products that essentially lock farmers in to using the pesticides and chemicals that they manufacture.
Is that Monsanto, let's say, for example, clearly has been this powerhouse that rules, that tells farmers what they can and can't do, what chemicals they put on, when they put them on, don't allow them to not buy other people's chemicals or pesticides, have to use theirs, and kind of really controls the agricultural marketplace and what farmers can do. And that's had a huge negative effect on both the farming industry and on what we eat. So, I mean, and you know, farmers have sued them and lost. Farmers in India are trying to battle and saying, no, you can't do this in India, leave us alone. We have our own seed, you can't control. They want to control the entire seed market of the planet. So, so in terms of what I just said, what does this merger mean? I mean, what could happen because of this merger if it's not stopped?
So, I mean, essentially, by allowing this merger to go through, the new combined company is the largest vegetable seed company in the world. It's the largest seller of herbicides, like Monsanto's Roundup, and it's
which
the
is
largest.
Destroying us.
It's destroying us. I mean, there's right now over 8,700 people suing Monsanto because they believe that their cancer, their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, was given to them by essentially Monsanto, by being exposed to Monsanto's Roundup. So there's a number of farmers, groundskeepers who apply these products every day who are suing Monsanto. I think one of the other things we're most concerned about is what this means for the future of our food and farming system. So it means that, like you said, farmers are locked in to using these products, using seeds, a lot of genetically engineered seeds that are engineered to resist the application of pesticides. So it means we're getting more and more pesticide applications, and there's been a massive increase in the use of pesticides, including glyphosate, neonicotinoids, and others that these companies manufacture.
They're killing
and
off
then the
all
other
pollinators.
are killing off all the pollinators.
Right.
I mean, monarch butterflies have declined by over 90% in the last 2 decades. Beekeepers on average are losing 40% of their hives every year, and that's just on average. I mean, beekeepers are losing way more, up to 60, 70, as much as 100% of their bees every year. So there's a clear correlation between the use of these pesticides and how they're really killing off the very web of life we depend on for our environment and for our food system, and all of us that want to eat every day. So by these companies controlling the marketplace, they're essentially telling farmers what to farm, which means that farmers can only farm certain things, and then there's only certain things that show up in the supermarkets that we can purchase and that end up on our plates.
Farmers weren't big enough or important enough for Monsanto to engage in active educating them about the uses and the risk of Roundup, which they were forced to apply in heavier and heavier concentrations every year. And now they face a higher threat of cancer due to decades of exposure to Roundup, a product that has earned this company billions of dollars. So what did Bayer, Monsanto do? They concocted another epically sinister business move to settle a small number of claims and leave other victims and all future victims, like John and the black farmers, with only pennies on the dollar.
Bayer has announced it's going to cough up $2 billion to settle future lawsuits filed by customers who exposed to their cancer-causing weed killer Roundup. How ridiculous. That is just a drop in the bucket of what this should cost. This is on top of $10 billion the company pledged last year to settle existing cases, people that are already dying of cancer. But if I look at the facts, there's no way that $2 billion part of it is going to work out. But I have with me somebody who's followed this case for a very long time. And Carrie Gilliam is an investigative journalist who's been closely following this litigation. Her new book, The Monsanto Papers, takes a deep dive into the lasting impact of the Roundup saga. She joins me now. Carrie, we've been covering lawsuits about Monsanto. As a matter of fact, full disclosure, I've actually been involved in the lawsuit, so I know a little bit about it. I think I've taken 4 depositions in this case. But I'm interested to know, you've been an investigative journalist a long time. Tell me what you think are the important talking points here. What do you think, what grabs you about this case?
Oh my goodness, I mean, this has gone on for so long. Really, what I've written about and what so many people have just been stunned by is what the internal Monsanto documents, the discovery documents that came out during the periods leading up to the trial, the 3 trials. The discovery documents showed us just decades of deception on Monsanto's part about the safety of its weed-killing products, Roundup, glyphosate-based Roundup. And you know this, as do many of the people who've been following the case. Monsanto was shown through its own internal records to be discussing ghostwriting scientific studies and manipulating regulators, manipulating the EPA and others, and really denying and hiding the cancer risk of its weed-killing products.
Yeah, tell me about the front groups. How did that work to where they could tell the American public, nothing to see here, just keep moving, everything's okay?
Yeah, I mean, this was really alarming. This was a network of front groups, organizations that were secretly funded by Monsanto and are secretly funded by, other companies as well, really to do, their dirty work and to go out and to attack, harass, write terrible articles about people like me or journalists at the New York Times or scientists with the International Agency for Research on Cancer to try to smear and intimidate people. Monsanto made it clear in its documents they didn't want it to look like these attacks were coming from them. They wanted it to look like they were independent voices that were, speaking out and calling Carrie Gilliam a liar, or Danny Hakim at the New York Times, a science denier, that sort of thing. But they also engaged in really alarming practices of ghostwriting articles that appeared in like Forbes magazine, or engineering op-eds and editorials and letters to the editors that were being sent to newspapers around the country to talk about, how safe Monsanto's products were and how wrong scientists were who associated their products with cancer. And these were all being engineered secretly by Monsanto. And we found that out in these documents as well.
Wasn't this really all about selling seeds? I mean, when you step back from it, in order to sell seeds, these geo seeds, geo-manufactured seeds, you had to have this thing, and this thing was Roundup, and the Roundup would be co-sold with the seed. So they sold seeds all over the planet, and they said, hey, by the way, you got to have Roundup to have the seed. But we miss the story if we don't understand this is about spreading geoseeds all over the planet, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that really is. Monsanto introduced glyphosate-based products, Roundup and other herbicides, in the 1970s, and their patent was expiring in the year 2000, and they were looking for a strategy to really hold on to and grow their market share. And they had all this technology, and they introduced genetically engineered soybeans and cotton and corn and canola and all sorts of products that were designed to be sprayed directly over the top while they were growing with Roundup. So these Roundup-ready crops really help perpetuate the use of glyphosate-based Roundup products. And we saw and we have seen just this exponential growth of Roundup use around the world, so much so, and I wrote about this in my first book, and it was an issue at trial, that Roundup products, glyphosate-based herbicides, are ubiquitous. They're found now in our air, our water, our food, our own bodies. We have a chemical that's been linked to cancer that is almost impossible to escape exposure to now at this point.
Yeah, it's being found in baby food, it's being found in beer, it's being found in cereal. And it all begins with the idea, if you can put these seeds all over the country, all over the planet, here's what ends up happening. A farmer, say in India, gets seeds from Monsanto. And once he gets the seeds and plants those seeds, he then has to do business with Monsanto going forward because he can't move from the GO seed to his regular seeds. And it's shocking that we're missing the whole point here, that this is about Monsanto saying we've got this whole world crisis of food, which was a lie, and they said we can create more food by this seed and by using this awful thing called Roundup. That's the way I see this, my 10,000 takeaway on that. And I've been working this case a long time.
No, I mean, that's very definitely a very big part of the evolution of this story and how this chemical came to be so widely used, and how we have now 100,000 people in the U.S. who have claims against Bayer, which bought Monsanto in 2018, alleging that they developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from exposure to Roundup. And so, as you mentioned, Bayer's agreed to pay out about $10 billion to settle those cases. They're trying to get a deal to pay $2 billion to settle future cases. The company has lost a lot of market share and a lot of investor confidence because of all of this. It's a very big corporate story. It's a very big public health story. And it's a very tragic story about what happens when corporations, push out these products and regulators do very little to rein them in.
So what does all this mean for people who think this doesn't apply to them because they don't use Roundup? They only use Miracle Gro, which is created by the same people. Well, let's say you are one of those people who use Miracle Gro, but you don't use Roundup. And so you're sitting here wondering, I don't get it. What's the big deal? Well, over time, in case you forgot, Miracle Gro and all inorganic fertilizers cause salt to build up in your soil. And as the salt builds up, it decreases your plant's abilities to take in nutrients more and more over time. So you may not notice it the first year, the second year, maybe not even the third year, but somewhere probably around the fourth or fifth year, you'll notice that you're having to use more and more Miracle Gro to get the same results. Don't forget that back in 2008, the company was proven to be liars. That's why the government had to make them recall Miracle Gro due to pesticides. But they hid it from the public. The governor made them do it. Don't forget the issue with water. When you use organic fertilizers, like fish emulsion and things like that, have you ever heard the warning, be careful of excess runoff because it could be harmful to water sources, including the oceans, the seas, the rivers? Isn't that where our fish live? Isn't that where the things that eat fish live? Isn't that the places where the things fish eat live? And don't we eat fish? And this is all in the name of Monsanto, a very deceptive company. They lied to consumers, and now they are monopolizing the seed industry. So think about this. If they can't get you to buy Roundup, wouldn't it make sense that they'll just put those same chemicals in your Miracle Gro? Now you're growing GMO crops that you'll eventually never be able to harvest viable seeds from. Think about that. Just think about it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Spicey out.